And Aisha, that is our top story tonight. And as we want to keep you informed about the status of COVID-19 in our state, especially ahead of Thanksgiving, a report warns our state is in the early stages of full resurgence. But so far, nothing's changed as far as guidelines in our state. 11 Alive's Hope Ford joins us live in front of the CDC headquarters in DeKalb County with the latest from the governor and that report.
That's right. Governor Brian Kemp is urging Georgians to follow best practices during the Thanksgiving holiday. He says stay vigilant to prevent an even steeper spike in cases, but the White House report suggests we could already be headed in that direction.
The report from the White House Coronavirus Task Force shows Georgia is in the red zone for cases. The first 4 lines read, "This is the moment to drastically increase mitigation." Governor Brian Kemp did not announce any new restrictions for businesses or enact a mask mandate during Tuesday's news conference.
We've seen an increase in cases. Thankfully, when you compare us to the rest of the country, I'm ecstatic that we're where we are.
Taking a closer look at this map, it shows Georgia is not nearly as bad as the Midwest and even neighboring states. But the report points out there's a 36% increase in Georgia COVID cases from last week.
I'm also concerned at where we could go if we don't have people follow the guidance and best practices.
The report lists these recommendations: ramp up testing to catch asymptomatic people, ensure masks at all times in public, significantly reduce capacity in public and private places, and ensure universities returning in winter move to mandatory weekly testing of all on and off campus students. For now, the governor is urging everyone to follow guidelines already in place.
But I will tell you, we have to continue to remain vigilant.
And the report lists Fulton, Gwinnett, and DeKalb as having the highest amount of new cases in Georgia in the last 3 weeks, representing nearly 30% of all new cases in Georgia. Now, the CDC and the governor are recommending to keep those Thanksgiving celebrations small, outdoors, or virtually to help protect any high-risk family members. Jennifer.